One of the most famous legacies of the Second World War and the Holocaust was the fate of Anna Frank. Her posthumously published diary entitled The Diary of a Young Girl today has been translated into over 70 languages and has sold millions of copies. It offers us an insight into the life of Anna's family living inside the Nazi-occupied Netherlands, and at the time offers glimmers of hope and normality. Her diary ends on the final entry written on Tuesday, the 1st of August 1944, after having documented her life hiding from the Nazis between 1942 and 1944. It is after this and the story comes to an end, within around 6 months following her arrest and deportation to concentration camps. Today we look at the final days and the tragic death of Anna Frank. And to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. For the first 5 years of Anna's life, she lived with her parents and her older sister in an apartment in Frankfurt. However, being Jewish when Hitler seized power in 1933, Otto Frank escaped to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, linked up with business connections. After this, the rest of the family followed and arrived in February 1934. Within Amsterdam, there were other Jewish families living there, and things looked bleak for them when the Germans began to occupy the city in summer 1940. By July 1942, the German authorities and the Dutch who worked with them began to round up Jewish across the Netherlands at a transit camp or a holding faculty known as Westerbork. This was a place where Jewish people would be held before being transported to a main concentration camp. Many were transferred to Auschwitz, a huge death camp and extermination faculty found within Poland. Anna and her family would find sanctuary and protection hiding in an apartment in a secret attic that would provide them with some degree of safety from the Nazis. The Frank family would later be joined by 4 Dutch Jewish also, and they would live there for 2 years inside the secret attic apartment behind the office of the family-owned business. The Franks were helped by a number of Otto Frank and his father's colleagues, and these helpers would prepare the hiding place and also smuggle food, clothes, and supplies to the Franks. This was risky, as if they were caught, they could possibly pay with their lives and be transported to the death camps. As well, Anna would spend 761 days inside the secret apartment, and it was risky. There were certain dangers throughout each day. For example, it was important that no noise from the hiders was made, as a warehouse found below the hiding place was still working on. The hiders had to be quiet and walk around in socks to make less noise. After the warehouse workers had gone home, the hiders were allowed to spread out throughout the building and were no longer restricted to the secret apartment. It was within this setting where Anna wrote much of her diary. There was a huge need for complete secrecy surrounding the apartment, not just for the Franks but also for the safety of the helpers. There was much hope for Anna and her sister, and they both wished to return to school once their ordeal was over, and believed they would go on to live a normal life following the war, and wished to become a journalist and continued completing studies whilst being inside the secret apartment. Anna would continue to write her diary until the 1st of August 1944, where the last entry was recorded. On the morning of the 4th of August 1944, the Gestapo, the German secret state police, would somehow discover the hiding place. The Franks and the rest of the people hiding inside were taken to the police headquarters and interrogated and held overnight. The common belief was that the Franks were betrayed by someone, or that the Gestapo were tripped off by unknown Dutch. However, there was also a thought that the Gestapo discovered the hiding place by accident, whilst conducting an investigation about illegal work and fraud involving Russian compounds, which was occurring at the warehouse and the house together, which 2 of the helpers, those hiding inside the apartment, were taken to a Gestapo prison and were interrogated to find out if they knew about any more people hiding. Anne's favorites said that they had lost all contact with the friends during the 25 months in hiding. After the investigation, those from the secret apartment and the helpers were separated. The helpers Johan Kleiman and Victor Kokular were taken to a detention center, and the 8 from the apartment were taken also to another detention center. This prison was overcrowded, and 2 days later they were transported to the Westerbork transit camp. Westerbork could only see over 100,000 Jewish pass through its gates. The Franks were kept here for over a month, and in early September 1944, they were transported by train from Westerbork in the Netherlands to Auschwitz-Birkenau in occupied Poland. The Franks and the others in the group who hid at the apartment arrived following 3 days. Along with 1,000 other Jewish, they were picked in horrible conditions. They would arrive at Auschwitz in the night and were forced off the train and told to leave their luggage behind. The men and the women were split up. Those from the secret apartment were then sent to the sauna, and a number was tattooed on their arm, and they were forced to shower and dress in the camp uniform, and along with their sister and mother, were forced into labor and were chosen to work and stayed in Auschwitz-Birkenau, whilst their father and other male had to walk to Auschwitz 3 kilometers away, and were forced also to do hard labor. All of the women from the secret apartment had survived their initial selection and ended up inside part of the camp for slave labor. Anna would stay at Birkenau for 2 months with her mom and her sister, and she would have suffered like dozens of thousands inside the camps. She would have been forced to have had her head shaved and forced to complete crawling work, and would have also seen the barbarism of the camp's guards. And the fear of disease would have been huge, with the worry that any signs of illness could result in someone being sent straight to the gas chamber. And her death's witnesses say that Anna became tearful and upset when she saw children being led to the gas chambers, and others would note her strength and courage. On the 26th of October 1944, a large amount of women were selected to go and work other locations. But Anna and her sister and her mother were not selected. 4 days later, another selection took place, and it was noted how the Frank women were forced to stand naked on the ground, and along with 1,000 other women were put then on a transport. The camp doctor selected Anna and her sister for transport, but not their mother. Their mother was forced to stay behind, and the mother and daughters were separated for the first time. Anna and her sister were locked in barracks and then forced into cattle wagons. All they were given was a small portion of bread, a piece of sausage or cheese, a small amount of drinking water per wagon to keep them alive. For her journey, with their destination being unknown, 2 days later their train would arrive at Bergen Belsen concentration camp, which was in northern Germany. Prisoners of war and Jewish had been imprisoned here, and the women were put into tents, but a few days after arriving the tents were damaged by a storm. And then Anna and her sister were kept in barracks with hardly any space. They had been forced to walk around 8 kilometers, and upon their arrival were given a piece of cloth with their new camp number. The destruction caused by storm was horrific, and the camp conditions became even worse. Lena Draxler, another hider, had accompanied Anna and her sister at this time, but the state of Bergen Belsen was like hell on earth. Disease was rife across the camp, and Anna was described at the time as being skinny and shivering, suffering from the awful treatment whilst inside Belsen, and ran into children she had known in Amsterdam. But during the winter of 1944 to 1945, there was a huge food shortage in the camp, and the camp was disgusting and crawling with rats. A former classmate stated how she was no more than a skeleton by then. She was covered in a blanket, and she could not wear the clothes anymore because they were crawling with lice. Anna would tell a classmate that she believed her parents were dead, and for this she did not want to live much longer. Her sister becomes so ill that she was very weak. In early 1945, the typhus epidemic spread throughout the concentration camps, and it killed 70,000 prisoners inside the camp. Other diseases were prominent, such as typhoid fever, and because of these conditions within the camp, it is not really clear how Anna died. It is mostly assumed that she died in the epidemic that was spreading throughout the camp. A survivor who knew Anna would say how her bed was around the corner from me. She was delirious, terrible, and burning up, pointing towards a fever. Although there were no gas chambers at the camp, around 1,000 people a day were dying before it was liberated. And the crematorium could not handle the numbers of bodies, and because of this, a corpse is laid around the camp. Witnesses would later say how her sister died in the epidemic. It would be a day after her sister's death in which Anna would pass away. As well, the exact dates of the Frank sisters' death was not recorded, and it is thought that they could have died as early as February 1945, or as late as a few weeks before the British liberated the camp. And most untreated victims of the typhus died within 12 days of their first symptoms. The Red Cross would conclude that Anna would pass away from typhus in March 1945, and the Dutch authorities later set the official date of the death for both Anna and her sister as the 31st of March 1945. Anna Frank's legacy and impact on the world following the Second World War would be huge, and she lives on through her writing and diary, which was published by her father, the only one of the Franks who had survived the concentration camps. Within her words and moments of beauty, which remind us that even in the depths of hell, beauty can be found if you look hard enough.